The first thing I heard before entering the throne chamber was the crying. It wasn't ordinary crying. It echoed through the silver corridors of the royal citadel like a warning alarm, sharp, desperate, and strangely powerful, as if the sound itself carried energy. Guards lined both sides of the hallway, their armored hands tight around pulse spheres, yet every one of them looked uneasy. A servant hurried past me, almost dropping a tray of glowing medical capsules. Another rushed in the opposite direction, carrying a crystalline device that flickered with diagnostic symbols. No one looked calm, which made sense, because in the center of all this chaos was the most powerful ruler in the outer spiral systems, Queen Serial of Thalrun. And her infant daughter had apparently been crying for nearly 6 straight hours. I wasn't supposed to be there. 3 hours earlier, I had been in Dock Sector 9, repairing navigation relays on a cargo shuttle I didn't even own. I worked freelance contracts wherever stations paid enough to keep oxygen in my quarters and fuel in my ship. Human engineers weren't rare anymore, but we were still considered low-ranking labor across most alien systems. Then royal soldiers arrived. Not requested. Not politely invited. They simply surrounded my workstation and informed me that the Queen demanded my immediate presence. No explanation. No reason. Just urgency. At first I assumed some reactor problem inside the palace needed a human specialist. Humans had a reputation for improvising impossible repairs, usually because our technology broke often enough that improvisation became culture. But when I reached the Citadel, no one took me near engines, shields, or power cores. They brought me toward the throne room, and the crying grew louder. A tall court official with silver markings across her face stopped at the final doors. "If the child continues," she whispered nervously, "the Queen may order the entire medical council replaced." "Replaced?" I asked. She gave me a look that suggested replacement might not mean reassignment. The doors opened. The throne room was enormous, black stone floor, towering luminous pillars, and a vaulted ceiling that shimmered like captured night sky. At the center stood Queen Serial herself, wearing dark ceremonial armor threaded with living light. Her expression was composed, but her eyes revealed something deeper than anger. Fear. In her arms was a small infant wrapped in violet fabric, crying so hard her tiny hands shook. Around the Queen stood healers, advisors, military commanders, and scientists, all helpless. A hovering medical sphere projected rotating biological readings. Temperature stable. Respiration stable. No neural distress. No toxin detected. "Then why is she still crying?" the Queen asked, her voice low enough to freeze the room. No one answered. That was when she looked at me. A human mechanic in oil-stained work clothes standing among royal elites. "You are Daniel Mercer?" "Yes." "You repaired the gravity collapse aboard Station Varan last cycle." "I patched it. Barely." "You also stabilized a damaged cryogenic chamber carrying 17 children." "I had help." The Queen stepped closer. "My daughter has rejected every healer, every nutrient sequence, every calming frequency, every biological comfort known to our empire." The baby cried harder. Then Queen Serial said the strangest sentence I had heard in years. "Walk forward." The court looked offended. One elderly advisor actually inhaled sharply, like this violated sacred law. I obeyed. I moved carefully across the polished floor, uncertain why any of this involved me. The child was still crying, loud enough to bounce off the pillars. Then I stepped within 3 meters of the throne, and everything changed. The infant stopped. Not gradually. Instantly. One breath, she cried. The next breath, silence. The room froze. The Queen froze. The medical sphere paused mid-rotation. The infant blinked at me with wide silver eyes, then reached one tiny hand toward my face. No sound, No distress. Only complete calm. No one moved for several seconds. Then one court scientist whispered, "Impossible." The queen looked down at her daughter, then back at me. The infant gave a tiny laugh, a real laugh, and the entire throne room felt like it had forgotten how breathing worked. The queen slowly extended the child toward me. "Take her." I nearly looked behind me to see if she meant someone else. But no. Everyone was staring directly at me. Your Majesty, that is not a request. Carefully, I accepted the infant. She was warm, surprisingly light, and the moment I held her, she rested her head against my chest like she had known me forever. A soft coo escaped her. The queen's advisors looked horrified. One guard stepped forward. "Majesty, this is highly irregular." The queen silenced him with a glance. Her daughter had not only stopped crying, she looked happier than anyone in the room. The queen studied me carefully. "What did you do?" "Nothing." The child touched my collar. A tiny smile formed. "I literally did nothing," I repeated. One healer activated a scanner near my shoulder. "Unknown resonance," she whispered. Another moved closer. "There is measurable harmonic stabilization around the infant's neural field." The queen narrowed her eyes. "What does that mean?" The scientist hesitated. "It means the child's biofrequency is synchronizing with the human." The court erupted into whispers. That sounded serious enough to concern me too. The queen motioned for silence. "Explain." The scientist swallowed. "Royal infants of Thalrun are born with heightened sensory networks. Sometimes they reject environmental frequencies they consider unsafe." The queen's gaze sharpened. "You are saying my daughter considered this room unsafe?" No one answered directly. The scientist continued carefully. "Apparently, she considers him safe." The queen looked almost offended by biology itself. For the next hour, every attempt to remove the child failed. The moment a servant reached for her, crying resumed. The second she returned to me, silence. By sunset, I was still standing inside the throne chamber, holding the future heir of an empire. At some point, someone brought me water. No one asked whether my arms hurt. By night, the queen dismissed most of the court and remained with only her chief advisor. The throne room felt quieter. She finally sat across from me while her daughter slept peacefully. "What is your family line?" she asked. "I'm from Earth." "That is not what I asked. I don't have royal blood, if that helps." "It does not." Her advisor, an older woman named Vera, activated an ancient-looking archive display. Symbols rotated. Gene records. Energy signatures. Old diplomatic data. Then Vera stopped at something unexpected. "Majesty." The queen stood. "What?" "There was once an agreement. Before the border wars." She enlarged the record. A fated treaty between humans and Thalrun from nearly 80 years earlier. A biological cooperation project. Genetic resonance studies. The queen looked stunned. This project was abandoned. "Officially," Vera said. "But records indicate one human bloodline showed rare compatibility with royal sensory matrices." I stared at them. "You're saying my family accidentally became compatible with alien royalty?" "Not royalty," Vera corrected. "Infant stabilization." The queen's expression shifted, meaning she was calculating possibilities. I immediately disliked where that calculation might go. "No," I said. The queen raised an eyebrow. "You do not yet know the offer." "I know that face." That's the face rulers make before assigning someone a life-changing duty. For the first time all day, the queen almost smiled. "You are observant." 3 days later, I had quarters inside the palace. Official title, Temporary Infant Stabilization Consultant. Unofficial reality, Human babysitter under military supervision. The infant's name was Princess Alira. and she refused sleep unless I remained nearby. At first, the court hated it. Commanders muttered. Scientists monitored everything. Nobles whispered that the queen had invited unpredictability into the royal household. But Princess Elira kept proving them wrong. She slept peacefully, fed normally, stopped distress episodes entirely. And strangely, she reacted strongest when I spoke ordinary human stories. Not technology, not science. Stories. Earth rain, old trains, broken satellites, street food. Things no royal archive would ever preserve. Weeks passed. The queen observed often, always from a distance, until one evening she finally spoke while Elira slept beside me in a garden chamber. "You do not fear me." I looked up. "You brought armed soldiers to my workshop. I feared you initially. And now I think you're mostly tired." That surprised her. "Mostly? The rest is hidden behind posture." She stepped closer to the glass wall overlooking the stars. "I have ruled 5 systems and negotiated wars. Yet none of my advisors solved what you solved by walking through a doorway. I still did nothing. That may be why it worked." For the first time, her voice lost royal sharpness. When her mother died during birth, she stopped, then corrected herself quietly. "When I nearly died during birth, the medical council said Elira's sensory field might develop unpredictably." I blinked. "You mean you carried her yourself?" "Yes." That explained something deeper behind the fear in the throne room. This wasn't imperial embarrassment. It was a mother terrified of failing her child. Before I could answer, alarms erupted. Red light flooded the chamber. Guards rushed in. "Majesty, breach at Eastern Shield Gate." The queen moved instantly. "Assassins." The attack came faster than expected, masked infiltrators using stolen court signatures. The palace descended into chaos. I picked up Elira as energy fire lit distant corridors. A guard shouted for evacuation, but the nearest route collapsed. One attacker reached the chamber entrance before security intercepted him. Too close. Too fast. Elira began crying again, not from fear, but something stranger. The lights flickered around her. Every nearby security panel exploded. The assassin stumbled. Then the infant raised her tiny hand. A pulse burst outward. The attacker slammed into the far wall. Silence followed. Even the guards stared. The queen arrived seconds later, sword drawn, seeing the unconscious intruder and me holding her daughter. What happened? No one answered immediately, because none of us fully understood. Vera arrived last, scanning Elira, then whispered, "Majesty, her abilities awakened early." The queen looked at her daughter, then at me. "Because of stabilization?" Vera nodded slowly. The queen understood before I did. Without calm, Elira's powers might have emerged dangerously unstable. Without someone grounding her, the future heir might never survive her own abilities. That night, after the attack ended, the queen stood beneath the stars while palace lights returned. "You saved more than my daughter." I held her. She did the dramatic part. "You stayed." That mattered more to her than the court would ever know. Days later, the official decree spread across 5 systems. Human Daniel Mercer granted permanent protection of the crown. Court access unrestricted. Advisor status by royal order. Naturally, the nobles hated that. Princess Elira loved it. Months later, when she learned her first word, the entire court gathered. Everyone expected mother. Or perhaps a royal phrase. Instead, she looked directly at me, reached upward, and said, "Duh." The throne room exploded into stunned silence. The queen slowly closed her eyes like destiny had developed a sense of humor. And then, she laughed. A real laugh. For the first time, The court heard their queen laugh without restraint, because the child who once cried without stopping had chosen her first comfort, and perhaps, in some strange way, her first family. Years later, historians would write that peace between humans and Thaurun began not with treaties, fleets, or diplomacy, but with one crying infant, who fell silent the moment a human entered the throne room.